absolutely wild up here, Atacama Desert. Windy, 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 cold. I just saw a cyclist go by, a bicyclist. And anyway, it's absolutely beautiful. I've got about 1 more hour to San Pedro de Atacama, where I stay for a couple days and do some day rides from there.
Welcome to the Atacama Desert. I've just crossed the very high altitude Paso de Llama, the northernmost border crossing between Argentina and Chile. I'll cross the Andes and the long border between the two countries several more times as I continue riding south to Patagonia. I'm climbing now to over 15,800 feet, the highest point on this road between the border and the town of San Pedro de Atacama. And you can hear my engine struggling at this altitude. I've been told the Africa Twin fuel injection is only mapped to 3,800 meters. I'm not sure if that's true, but it seems about right. I lose a lot of power above that elevation, and when I descend, after a few hours of riding, the fuel mixture sorts itself out. After the salt flats in Uyuni, I crossed from Bolivia into La Quiaca, Argentina, and I grinned at this road sign. You're deep into the southern hemisphere when you start seeing signs for Buenos Aires. Even the beer knows where I'm going. It reminded me of a day 30 years ago when I was riding across the desert in this shared taxi, an old and powerful Dodge Charger, from Damascus, Syria to Amman, Jordan. Our Kurdish driver was belting out love songs, hot wind blasted in the windows, a sweet fragrance as we peeled the oranges that one of the riders packed into the car shared with the rest of us. We passed road signs for Baghdad and Mecca, and I had that same feeling of pushing deep into a land that was new to me. From La Quiaca, I was all alone for around 5 hours of sandy dirt tracks. Not a single car or town, but finally I hit the main road and climbed up to the Chilean border at Paso de Llama, stopping for the night at El Cactus in the Argentinian town of Susques. For dinner, I ate vicuña stew. Vicuñas are the scrappy wild llamas that live at these high, harsh altitudes. When I leave Susques in the morning, it's sunny and well below freezing, but at least it's windy, so it feels like 13 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 10.5 Celsius. Many adventure riders have preceded me on this route, leaving their stickers on the one gas pump in town. The desert opens up below me, and I begin a fantastic descent of nearly 8,000 feet or 2,500 meters, with a dozen or more of these ramps for runaway trucks. I find a terrific hotel on the edge of San Pedro de Atacama with llamas on staff. They love to eat these nuts that fall from nearby trees. There are horses, too, and the entire place is built from mud and straw bricks, formed by hand and dried in the sun. I enjoy a slow morning after a few long days of riding. Wind, sand, cold, elevation, all of it pretty exhausting. I try to keep a schedule, 3 days of riding, then 1 day of rest. But I'm on a stretch now where I'll be riding 6 or 7 days straight, so I welcome a morning of coffee with bread and jam and conversation with some visitors from Santiago. But soon enough, I've loaded up on water and I'm riding into the desert. Water's key, as the Atacama Desert is the driest place on Earth. I'm looking for the legendary Magic Bus. I know there should be a road off to my right, but the GPS is a bit confused. Finally, I find a turn that looks promising. The Magic Bus is just a skeleton of an old bus abandoned in the desert, but it's also a fitting metaphor for this place, where the remains of the past exert such a strong pull on the present. In the ancient salt residue appearing on the ground, in the rock carvings of indigenous people who've inhabited this desert for millennia, and in the people who continue to search this vast, inhospitable area for the bodies of their relatives, the disappeared, who were abducted and murdered at Pinochet's direction. His regime turned an abandoned mining camp into a concentration camp, so isolated in the desert it barely needed security, and they buried their victims in mass graves. Groups such as the women of Calama scour the desert in search of bone fragments or shoes or anything that might remain of the disappeared. If you're interested in more about the Atacama Desert, I really recommend this beautiful film, Nostalgia for the Light. Despite being the driest place on Earth, the Atacama Desert has a glorious annual bloom. This year is one of the most spectacular they've had in a decade, and as I ride, I'm scanning for flowers. It's supposed to look like this, and like this. And I'm thinking, maybe it's just because I'm colorblind, which I am, that I'm not spotting any flowers. And by the way, I didn't take these photos. But what I'll find out later tonight at the hotel is that the area of the desert that's blooming is 800 miles from here. And it finally really sinks in that the Atacama Desert is nearly 1,000 miles long. That's New York to Florida. Distances are huge down here. Because the air's so dry, there's no humidity, and that condition, along with so little man-made light, makes the Atacama one of the best places on Earth to view the stars, so there are lots of huge telescopes, such as the appropriately named Very Large Telescope, the VLT, located at Paranal Observatory. I didn't take this picture of La Silla Observatory either, a mere 700 miles from here. I've already decided I'm crossing back into Argentina for a couple days, so these sites at the southern end of the Atacama Desert will have to wait for another trip. And then, still searching for flowers, the sand getting deeper, I unceremoniously drop the bike. The preferred technique for lifting a big bike is to put your butt to the seat and walk the bike back. But I can't get any footing in the sand, and my feet, as well as the tires, just slide. try to lift facing the bike, but still my boots slip in the sand. I wish I'd set up the camera properly for all of this. The footage I have at this less than ideal camera angle is completely accidental. But I'm actually in a bit of a low-grade panic here. I've only got a few swallows of water left, the sun is getting low, it seems there's almost no chance of anyone passing by this late. The bike weighs 550 pounds, and I'm pretty damn exhausted. I'm not thinking like a YouTuber, sharing the drama, and I shut the camera off. But the happy news is that I finally drag the bike to a better spot and dig out a trench for the tires, and I get the Africa Twin standing. I don't waste any time riding back to San Pedro de Atacama. At one point where the trail splits, I'm not sure which way to go, and the map is no help. I decide to try left, and it works out. San Pedro de Atacama is a dusty town, but full of good restaurants and bakeries and travelers, and I have dinner tonight with another group of bicyclists, including a couple I met last week in Bolivia. The next day, I head to a more touristy area of the desert, so even if I crash in the sand, I probably won't have to worry about being marooned. This is the Valley of the Moon. There are trailheads along the road and short walking loops to see the moonscape. At one of these, I meet Matias and Sally, who are here on a getaway from their home in Puerto Varas, Chile. I feel a really warm, immediate connection with them, a spark and intimacy that are great gifts of travel. And I'll end up staying in Puerto Varas in a few weeks, meeting their family and having dinner at their table. If Ukraine were in the Atacama Desert, this would be their flag. Before I've even left the Valley of the Moon, I'm already missing the intensity of the Atacama Desert. Intense in the dryness of the air, the unfiltered sun, its history, both rich and harsh, its profound beauty. Tomorrow I'll be riding back over the Andes, back into Argentina. The roads will be mostly paved. There'll be many high, crazy passes, twisties that are a motorcyclist's dream. I'll get on Argentina's famous Ruta 40, Route 40, which runs the length of Chile. I'll hop on and off Route 40 all the way to Patagonia. The coffee in Argentina brings me back to my month in Colombia. Everywhere in Argentina, even in gas stations, you can get a first-rate espresso or cappuccino, usually served with a short glass of sparkling water. And the wine. Somehow you can taste the altitude in their high elevation wines, a sort of muscularity, a crispness. My 5-day detour to the Atacama Desert has given Jacob, the human dynamo bicyclist, time to catch up with me in Cafayate, Argentina, where we drink wine and eat delicious empanadas. Empanadas become a major source of sustenance and pleasure for both of us for the rest of our journeys, and I even ride along the Empanada Road through a town that claims, dubiously, to be the empanada's birthplace. I'll ride far enough east that I'm back at low elevations in the humidity and heat for a couple days, and will be happy for the fringe on these curtains so I can hang my mosquito net against squadrons of bloodsuckers. But then I'll ride back up to the eastern slope of the Andes, staying in beautiful spots like this one, 10 miles outside Chilecito. On Saturday morning, I say goodbye to the desert and ride back up those 8,000 feet to cross the border into Argentina. A few nights after that cabin in Chilecito, I'll reach Mendoza, the famous wine center of Argentina. I'll end up staying a whole week, recharging myself with rest and excellent meals and wine. I visit some wineries. I especially like this one, Salentine, in the Uco Valley. For the first time in Mendoza, I experienced these wine machines, right up there with the invention of the wheel and fire and toast. Jacob takes this picture of me, clearly ecstatic, on one of my many visits to the Máquina de Vino. And yes, my week lounging around Mendoza will give Jacob the chance to catch me again on my last night here. But before I cross the border back into Argentina, I come upon Christy and Jörg, 2 Swiss Germans who I had dinner with in San Pedro de Atacama and have been looking out for on my ride this morning. I've brought chocolate for Christy and peanuts for Jörg.
We haven't expected anymore. We thought you have gone far away.
They imagine swapping their pedals for a motor, and we say farewell. I'll leave Mendoza with a wad of cash that Jen has sent me through Western Union. Inflation is high in Argentina. The largest bill is currently only worth about $7, so the stacks are fat. From Mendoza, I'll climb to the Uspallata Pass, crossing the Andes again into Chile. Jacob, who will ride this route just after me, will articulate so well the feeling I had on this pass, cowering beneath these massive, severe mountains. It's like reverse vertigo, he says. The rock faces making you feel infinitesimally small and irrelevant. I feel vertigo keenly on the edge of a cliff, and here, instead of a sensation that I could fall, I feel I'm being crushed. On the Chilean side, they've built what's basically a roller coaster. And then I'll be riding all the way across Chile to the city of Valparaiso on the Pacific coast. It's a port city with 45 steep hills. To get anywhere on foot, you go up and down staircases. There are also 16 funiculars to make walking around the city a little easier. And the street art in Valparaiso is famous. It's a vibrant and gritty city with great music and a university. I'll stay 3 nights. But before any of that, I've got a few more miles till Paso de Llama, a little more time in this inspiring part of Chile, so connected to the past and to the heavens, and so otherworldly in its beauty.